All right, here's where the federal government shutdown sits again on day 16. Here we go, folks. Senate Democrats are poised once again today to again reject a stopgap spending bill that would reopen the government, insisting that they won't back away from demands that Congress take up health care benefits. The House needs a simple majority, but the Senate needs 60 votes to extend government funding, meaning a funding measure would need to garner more bipartisan support. Meanwhile, a judge halted the administration's effort to lay off roughly 4,000 federal workers during the shutdown. And the latest economic figure to be put back on the back burner, the producer price index for September, has been delayed. Let's bring in NBC Washington correspondent Alice Barr. Alice, we know that healthcare provisions are at the center of these debates and what's going on here, but what else stands in the way of the deal?
I think the question of trust cannot be overstated here, and that goes in both directions. Both parties do not trust the other side, and particularly Democrats have been saying that they're not going to sign any kind of funding bill that does not include this extension right now of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare health subsidies to keep premiums from spiking. Republicans have said we'll take that up later, and Democrats say that they don't trust them to deal with the issue later. They want it done now. It was interesting that the Alaska Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski, she put a fine point in this, saying that why would Democrats decide to go along with the Republicans right now? And she pointed out the fact that we've already seen these rescission packages where money is clawed back that Congress had already agreed to, and the Trump administration then decided it didn't want to have spent, and it took that money back. She said, why, as a Democrat, then would you make a deal right now when you know in the back of your head that, as she put it, there could be backdoor moves to change whatever is agreed to up front?
All right, now with layoffs that got blocked by a federal judge, how is the administration trying to still justify this?
Well, the administration has said that this is about efficiency, and Russell Vought, who is the White House budget director, who was named, by the way, specifically by Senator Lisa Murkowski, who I just mentioned, he's been a longtime advocate for shrinking the federal government, and Democrats are now accusing him of just kind of taking this opportunity to carry out ideas that he already had in mind in terms of efficiency, cutting out bureaucracy. And so they're saying, and President Trump has said multiple times, that because Democrats have allowed the government to remain shut down because they're not adding their votes to reopen the government, that this allows this opportunity now for the executive branch to have a lot of power and make a lot of decisions about what they want to see happen. Same thing, by the way, that Democrats were concerned about happening earlier in the year when they prevented a government shutdown because the executive branch has more expanded powers during a shutdown. Notable, though, that the federal judge who stood in the way of, who temporarily blocked these firings of federal workers during the shutdown, she said that they are not legal. And she said, in fact, that it seemed that the Trump administration was trying to use this opportunity of the government being shut down, of funding not happening, and of the regular functions of the government not taking place to assume that all bets are off. And she said, quote, that the laws don't apply to them anymore. So she certainly had a very stiff response to the efforts underway by the administration.
All right, as the shutdown moves into the third week, we're hearing more stories about federal workers looking for help to make ends meet. Talk to us about that human element real quickly.
Yeah, really important to drill down on that. There are federal workers all over the country in all different kinds of roles and in uniform, in, suit and tie, whatever it may be. And food banks are a really central point where we can see that this is starting to kind of bite, because food banks are seeing a surge in need. And there was one in particular in Alabama that I was listening to this morning. The executive director there was talking about one federal worker family in particular that came in and said they were not getting a paycheck. This had never happened to them before. They had never had to go to a food bank. They were embarrassed and they were terrified. And that really is the reality that is kind of rippling across the country now, Chesley.
All right, Alice Barr, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for your insight. Appreciate it.